Okay, hello everybody. Now is 5 o'clock. You hopefully had a good night's sleep. If not, that's okay. We are here today to talk with Dr. Miyoko about her work in the ornithology lab at Cornell. We're going to start soon. We're going to wait just a few more minutes before, maybe around 5:03, 5:04, we're going to start for real. If it's the first time you're here, hello everybody. I am Boaz Nadav-Manes. I'm the University Librarian in Lehigh University Library. This is a Friends of the Lehigh University Library talk. We have those programs every few months or so. And in those programs, we celebrate reading and culture, and we also put together exhibits like the one that we have now in the Lindemann, and I'll talk a little more about it in a few minutes. There is another exhibit now in the EWFM. It's called Made in America. It's gonna be up on our walls there on the 6th floor south till the end of January. And that exhibit is by Christopher Payne. He's an amazing photographer, and we're very fortunate to have his exhibit on our walls for a few more months. So please come and visit. Otherwise, we had our 13th annual Harvest of Ideas program just a few weeks ago. If you were there, awesome. If you're not, check it out. This is an annual event in which we celebrate offers scholarship, new publications, new research that they published, and we do that once a year, similar time frame. And another event that we are coming up with has to do with a celebration of information and literature. We're working with Touchstone Theater on a program that we hope to set together in a few months. And also another program that is coming is with the University Press. So trying to kind of talk a little more about what our press is doing, how what's the process around being an author, and we're gonna advertise that program soon. So we got 68 people right now, so maybe we just start. So hello everybody again. I am Boaz, and nice to see you all today. This is a kind of relaxing, informal format usually. What we do is like I do what I do right now, and I'm saying hello. Afterwards, we have a speaker that talks about a particular topic, and then we end up with some time for Q&A. So what you'll do if you have questions, and I'm sure you will have some because it's such a fabulous topic, just use the Q&A button and ask your question. And what I do afterwards is to ask the questions, and then we end up around 6:30 or before, it depends on you. So we'll see how it goes. And I want to thank Lois Black, Director of Special Collections, for working on the exhibit that is now in the Lindemann about birds and ornithology, and to also thank Jen McAvoy, who is our administrator of everything. And she's helping to set up those meetings and the programs, and today even. So so I'll start kind of by just saying a few words about what we're working on. The exhibit that you can go now to visit in the Lindemann is the current exhibit. It's in the first floor. It shows work that features birds that have been a subject of worship, observation, scientific study, and narratives throughout time. On display through December and online, Feathers and Folios includes works by John Gould, John James Audubon, Hans Christian Andersen, and others featuring imagery and stories of birds. The small exhibit assembles highlights of the Lehigh Library Special Collections extensive natural history collection, illustrating extinction, includes historical and modern images of the Carolina parkite, passenger pigeon, and ivory-billed woodpecker, birds that were abundant during Audubon's time and became extinct in the 20th century. Such images and bird biographies now serve as a primary source accounts that are invaluable to scientists. The observation of everyday citizen scientists supplement the historical record and remind us that anyone can contribute to the field of ornithology. And as a bird watcher, long time ago, that was like my first insight into a scientific process, and I loved it so much, and still, and kind of am personally really interested. We have so many birds all around here. And you may know that I've been a Cornell staff member for many, many years. And that's when I started to learn more about the amazing ornithology lab that they run. And I met Miyoko too in a leadership program there and was very impressed. And that's how it all came together today. So please visit our exhibit in the Linneman. It's open till the end of December. So you got 2 months to go before it closes. And it's really, really amazing and very, very interesting. So I'm going to now introduce Miyoko. Dr. Miyoko Chu is a Senior Director of Communications at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, a non-for-profit organization that engages people of all walks of life in understanding and protecting birds and nature. An ornithologist and science writer, Dr. Chu led the team that created the Cornell Lab's free Merlin Bird ID app, which has been downloaded by more than 10 million people around the world. Wow. She is the author of Songbird Journeys, 4 Seasons in the Lives of Migratory Birds, Birdscapes, a pop-up celebration of bird songs in stereo sound, and America's Favorite Birds, 40 Beautiful Birds to Color. So, Miyoko, so nice to see you again virtually, and I'm really looking forward to see what you're working on. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Boaz, and thanks, Jen and Lois and the Friends of the Lehigh University Libraries, and thanks to each of you for taking time out of your busy day to join by Zoom. Give me a moment and I will begin the screen sharing. All right. You seeing that okay, Boaz?
Yes.
All right. Well, birds and artificial intelligence might not seem to have a lot in common, but AI combined with the power of millions of bird watchers is really revealing new ways to see birds and understand our planet and to take conservation action. So that's what I'll be talking about. And I want to start by taking a moment to just marvel at some of the world's 11,000 bird species. Birds are really dazzling. I think they have an outlandishly good sense of fashion, as you can see here with a few examples. They can steal the show on the dance floor, so they can tap dance on water, they can take to the sky for a courtship flight. They are master musicians. They've got 2 voice boxes in their syrinx, so they can actually harmonize with themselves. They can sing 2 melodies at once. Or, like on the right side there, you can see it using an air sacs and wings to beatbox and make swishes and popping noises. And they don't even need to rehearse the choreography. They can do these breathtaking improvised flights. Birds are architects too. They can build family home in days with just their bills to craft. They can use mud, they excavate wood, they weave grass. and they're really hardworking parents. So we make about 3 meals a day for our kids, right? If that. And then in 11 days, that would be 33 meals. So in that amount of time, a pair of yellow warblers was seen bringing 2,373 meals for their chicks. So pretty formidable parents. And they are brainy too. Birds could actually beat me at a game of memory by far. So a Clark's nutcracker can store 200,000 seeds in a single season, and it can remember where they are for 285 days. Now, it does leave about 25% of white bark pine seeds in the ground. And for that, they get credit as nature's foresters because they help grow the next generation of trees. And as for athletics, penguins can dive more than 1,000 feet without any gear. Bar-headed geese can fly 25,000 feet over the Himalayas. And a bar-tailed godwit holds the marathon record, a flight of 8,425 miles from Alaska to Australia in 11 days without a stop. And birds are the ultimate survivors. They can weather an Arctic winter with no clothing, no shelter. They can catch a fish without a net or a hook. They can navigate thousands of miles at night with no compass. And they happen to have the coolest ancestors, dinosaurs. It's taken 3.7 billion years to generate the 11,000 bird species on Earth today, here and nowhere else. So I feel that it is really a gift that we get a lifetime to know birds. They're outside our doorstep, and once you start noticing them, their whole world opens up to you. And with all the amazing things that birds can do, maybe their biggest superpower is that they touch the hearts and minds of people, and they inspire us across politics, geographies, and cultures to treasure and protect our planet. So birders sometimes talk about their spark bird, which is the first bird that grabbed their imagination and opened the door to more experiences and insights with birds. And this photo shows my spark birds when I was about 11 years old. I grew up near Berkeley, California, and occasionally my family would drive across the Bay Bridge to San Francisco's Chinatown. And one day my dad and I saw a poultry truck there in the street. It was packed with cages of birds, filled with beautiful pigeons. And when I saw them, I started to cry because I imagined them heading for someone's dinner table. And my dad, who had raised pigeons as a boy in Shanghai, decided on the spot to help me rescue some. So he paid a few dollars, and we got 2 pigeons. They were handed to us in a paper bag. Their wings and feet were tied up. And when we got home, we built a coop in the backyard. I ended up spending hours in there with them day after day. I watched them eat and preen and court and raise their young. And I decided I wanted to be like Jane Goodall, studying animals in the wild someday. So I did go on to study wild birds in the deserts of California. I was a writer too, and I took a job at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology 23 years ago as a science communicator. And it's really been a dream job for me to share the wonder and joy and knowledge of birds through storytelling. But in recent years, the evidence has really mounted that we are in a biodiversity crisis and have to do something about it. And my work has become not just about sharing joy and knowledge, but showing what's at stake and what we can do about it. So in the past, there hadn't been a way to really quantify how many birds we lost. How would you do that, right? But in 2019, scientists analyzed 50 years of data from participatory science projects, bird watchers who've been contributing these data over that time. And so for the first time, they were able to put a number to it. 2.9 billion breeding birds lost from the US and Canada since 1970. That happens to be the year that I was born. So 1 in 4 birds gone since I was born. This is such a big loss in so short a time, yet we really hadn't been able to see it in its totality or to even really perceive that baseline shift from one year to the next. Now, this ability to see that happening in real time is different from the past. Boaz mentioned passenger pigeon as one of the birds that's featured in the exhibit. Here's one that's outside our Cornell Lab of Ornithology. It's looking up to the sky where these birds once flew. In 1886, an observer in Ontario reported a flock that was a mile wide and 300 miles long. It took 14 hours to pass overhead. And when I look at this museum tag, I get chills because it shows that a specimen was collected just 4 years after that image I just showed you. And that was just a mile from the Cornell campus. So on my way to work, I could have seen their flocks. I would have been able to marvel at how abundant they were without a thought crossing my mind that they would all vanish. And without knowing how steeply their numbers were plummeting, there really was no feedback loop. Commercial hunting and logging kept driving the declines down until a single pigeon was left. And she was held captive in the Cincinnati Zoo until she died, and the world's most abundant bird went extinct in 1914. So what comes to mind when you think about the most common birds today? Red-winged blackbirds, snow geese, American robins. I see robins on every lawn and hear them singing in the morning. So I really can't imagine them going extinct. But at the same time, we have to remember that passenger pigeons were more abundant than any of these. And if we look at the heartbeat of birds on our planet, what we're seeing is the early warning signs that many of our birds are in trouble. According to the most recent US State of the Birds report, breeding birds are declining in every US habitat, except in wetlands, where there's been really targeted conservation efforts at scale. But in arid lands and eastern forests, they've declined by more than 25% since 1970. Sea ducks, shorebirds, grassland birds have declined by 30% or more. And the report identifies 90 tipping point species. They're not endangered yet, but they've lost more than half of their populations in the past 50 years. And they're on track to lose another half in the next 50 if nothing changes. And so with a half-life of 50 years, there's really not time to lose. We really have to jump into action. So we have this new understanding about the scale and the pace of this downward curve in bird populations. It's echoed by similar declines in insects and frogs, mammals, and other wildlife too. And we can see how we have to bend the curve. We have to bend the arc away from the depletion of nature. We have to move toward a future that sustains it. And it is a big, daunting challenge. But humans are capable of extraordinary innovations. We can do so many things that were once unimaginable. So we just need the will to do it and the imagination to do it and bend that curve to sustain nature. And one new tool in our toolkit is the growth of artificial intelligence. So with AI, we can enable computers to simulate human learning and problem solving and comprehension. It's really accelerating access to knowledge and new discoveries. It's really changing how we connect with, understand, and take action for birds. So we'll take a look at 3 examples. One is how AI is helping people identify birds. Another is how it's helping us see things that are really difficult to perceive. And then also helping us quantify, detect and predict the timing and scale of movements of birds and abundance and how we can use that. All right, so if a spark bird is a life-changing moment of connection, knowing its name is a really powerful moment that helps unlock really a world of knowledge. Because once you know the name, then you're just a few clicks away from hearing all about your mystery bird. So this is the Cornell Lab of Ornithology's All About Birds website, where millions of people come to ask questions about birds. And about 15 years ago, our web team took a look at what people were searching for. And we could see that many people were describing birds with the hope of identifying them. So they were typing in phrases like gray bird with black stripe on the head. And to be honest, this would have yielded a rather confusing smorgasbord of choices, such as those you see here, everything from a heron to a vulture or a woodpecker or a duck. And identifying birds by sound was even harder because despite your best description, like Weedle-lee, Weedle-loo, your search results might suggest anything from a dove in your backyard to an oceanic shearwater, or you can see in the bottom left corner there, 10 birds that sound like aliens. So our web developer suggested that we create the bird version of this online game that he'd seen called 20Q. It uses artificial intelligence in a game of 20 questions. The computer tries to guess what you're thinking in 20 questions. And the more time the game is played, the smarter the computer gets at guessing correctly. Because the responses, like your whole interaction, is used in machine learning to improve its performance. So we thought Merlin could guess your bird if you provided clues to 5 specific questions. Where was the bird? When did you see it? What size was it? What color? What was it doing? For example, was it at a feeder or was it walking on the ground? And with that information, Merlin would give you the most likely species with a lot better results than typing in a description in a search box. And as it turned out, we didn't even need to use machine learning for Merlin to guess accurately. And that is because we were able to use the wisdom of the crowd, 1 million contributors to eBird. eBird is a participatory science project. People can report their birds that they're seeing from anywhere on Earth, anytime. And in this global map, you can see the highlighted areas show where contributors have added more than 1.8 billion observations of birds and 67 million photos and sounds. With this vast amount of data, eBird knows what birds are most likely to be seen near you any day of the year. And so here you can see that 276 bird species have been reported in Lehigh County. And when you are identifying a bird, we can go from 11,000 possible species worldwide to 276 right here in Lehigh County. So that whittles it way down. And then when you tell Merlin the date that you saw the bird, that number becomes even fewer. So the blue bar at the top shows the months through the year, and the green bars show when each species is present based on all those data people give us. And here you can see that Merlin's going to consider suggesting chickadees and titmice rather than the birds that are not here in November, like barn swallows. So that whittling down process plus the other clues you give Merlin is enough to guess the bird. No AI needed. But as we were developing Merlin, we also met AI researchers at the University of California, San Diego, and they were exploring how to use photographs and machine learning to teach computers to recognize birds in photos. Now, at the time, one of the biggest obstacles was how do you get the massive numbers of photos needed to teach the computer? They all had to have correct identifications, or the computer would learn the wrong birds. So it turns out that those millions of photos correctly identified could come from eBirders. And that was the source for our AI collaborator, Grant Van Horn, to be able to rapidly train computers. And so in 2016, we released Merlin Photo ID, and you just snap a bird photo, and Merlin identifies it with computer vision. Now, these days, it's something we really take for granted. iNaturalist does it. It's another app. Google Lens can identify all kinds of plants and animals. At the time, it was really an exciting new capability. But even then, the real holy grail was to identify a bird by sound. So our team and others had tried for many years to develop bird sound ID without success at first. And this might seem surprising because, after all, the app Shazam had been identifying music since 2002. But if you were to play a bird song, Shazam wouldn't be able to identify it. And, a song on the radio, it's identical every time it's played. Bird songs are not. They're variable. There's difference in how an individual bird sings. There's noise out in the landscape, multiple birds, airplanes, voices. So the real breakthrough came when our scientists decided to teach the computer using images of sounds rather than the acoustics. And because eBirders have contributed recordings, with each one identified as species, again, we had a huge training set to teach the computer bird songs. So what I'm going to do is show a black-capped vireo singing. You're going to see those images of its sound as it's singing. And those are the kinds of images that are used to train the computer. I'm hoping you'll be able to hear the sound if I did the settings correctly, but Boaz, please interrupt me if you do not hear a bird singing momentarily. Okay, so when you go out and listen for birds now, if you turn on Merlin Sound ID, it will identify the birds in real time, and it's going to show you the pictures and highlight in yellow which birds are singing. Okay, and this feature, it's pretty magical, and more than any other feature, it's really transformed how people are learning about birds. We're hearing from people who are vision or hearing impaired who are using it to enhance their ability to interact with birds. People of all ages using it to figure out what bird is singing when you can't really see it up in the trees. And even hardcore birders are using Merlin to pick out a species or two that maybe they missed hearing in that dawn chorus. the growth has been amazing. If you take a look at since Sound ID was launched in 2021, that's really when Merlin downloads started taking off. And I'm going to show you a sampling of TikTok videos because those numbers are one thing. We're now at 22 million downloads. And when you see the people who are using it, it's really fun to just imagine all these different experiences happening around the world.
So I'm gonna show you how to bird like a pro. And all you need is one app. That app is called Merlin.
It's called Merlin Bird ID.
The Merlin Bird ID app.
Merlin Bird ID.
Merlin.
Where you just open this app and you hit Sound ID. You download like whatever region you live in, and then it'll identify all the birds around you and light up when they sing.
Look it. That was just all in like 5 minutes of me sitting out in my back deck.
This app is now part of my personality. I just left a work meeting, heard birds chirping, hopped in the whip, pulled the app out. House finch.
I'm obsessed. I'm never going to stop using this app. Like, I can't even handle it.
So I'm addicted to this, not in a literal medical sense, but I don't think I could live without it.
I'm addicted to this, so addicted. I'm addicted to this.
My dad sent me this, like, the sound app for birds. And you press play, and it listens for the birds around you, and it tells you what bird it is and what the bird looks like. So now, my ass over here, since I've been using it, thinks I'm like a bird expert.
It's the Merlin Bird ID app, and I cannot recommend this enough. I would never consider myself to be a birder. Never thought I'd see the day, honestly, but this app has really just full on converted me. Every time I hear a little chirp, a little squeak, I'm whipping out the app, I'm trying to take a picture, I'm trying to find the call, I'm trying to call back to it. It's honestly really fun.
Okay, so yes, I heard of the Merlin app before. I use it all the time in my backyard. Lots of birds we have caught on it. We got a yellow-throated warbler, I think it was called. We get blue jays, cardinals, white-throated sparrows all the time. And yeah, it's awesome app.
So I'm gonna.
So I just love seeing that. It just really brings to life for me how so many people are getting connected with birds. There's also, I must say, silver lining in the pandemic. A lot of people started bird watching, and we've seen that momentum continue afterward. So now you've seen examples of how observations from birders and AI are creating new tools. Those tools are bringing people into birding, and that's generating more data on birds. And with those data, we can now see and quantify what's happening with birds around the globe. So turning those billion data points from eBird into actually useful information, it really is not easy. This massive amount of data has required supercomputing power and AI to process. And we can now use the big data and 79 environmental variables, including habitat data from NASA, to mine insights and model where birds are and how many there are with really unprecedented accuracy. Scientists are even using techniques that were developed for computer games, to quickly process and create graphics. And so with all that number crunching and AI, scientists can now show the ebb and flow of thousands of birds all across the hemisphere. This map shows the movements of 117 migratory bird species, and the purple areas show the highest density. So watch how the area around Pennsylvania lights up in purple, and then how birds funnel down to Mexico and the Yucatan Peninsula and light up there. And instantly you can see how connected these places are for birds and how important it is to conserve networks of habitats. These maps also help prioritize conservation efforts. You can see on the right, the colored in areas are priority sites that could protect 30% of those populations. We can also see these maps for individual species, and this one shows the movements of barn swallows worldwide. Using AI techniques, the Cornell lab has also generated maps that show the population trends. Now, this is a big deal, showing not just where they are, but are they increasing or decreasing? And we can do that now down to an 8-mile radius. So I looked up the trend for Pennsylvania's state bird, the ruffed grouse. And on this map, blue shows where they're increasing and red shows where they're decreasing. If you zoom into Pennsylvania on the right, you can see that our state bird is declining here. And this helps pinpoint where birds need the most help, and also, on the flip side, which conditions can help them thrive. We're also using AI combined with radar to reveal invisible bird migrations. So a lot of people don't realize, but a lot of migratory birds are migrating at night when you can't see them. And just like radar can detect rain and snow in the air, it can also detect birds. So with this technique, we can see how many birds are aloft. We can get live views of that, and we can make bird forecasts, just like weather forecasts, but it tells you what birds are coming through. So on September 27th, more than 500 million birds were predicted to take flight over the continent. The white and yellow show the highest concentration areas. And then you could drill down from those continental numbers right down to Lehigh County. And at the left, you can see more than 300,000 birds passed over the county on October 26th. We can use bird sightings that people are sharing with eBird by day to infer which species are likely to be aloft at night. Or we can record the night sky and ask the computer to use AI techniques to recognize the calls of birds as they fly above. So this shows what we call the Rosetta Stone to warblers. Each warbler species utters a different high-pitched call when it's migrating, and we could take thousands of hours of recordings and ask the computer to automatically identify who's flying and how many are calling. Our K. Lisa Yang Center for Conservation Bioacoustics creates both the hardware and the software to do this and detect wildlife on land and also underwater. So they're now training algorithms to recognize not only the sounds of birds, but all kinds of animals, insects, fish, whales, elephants. And this technology is being used all over the world to monitor animals, many of which would be difficult or really impossible to see and count at large scales otherwise. So now we can use the power of these tools and data in smarter ways to protect birds and to meet goals, whether that be for energy, agriculture, or other uses for lands and waters. So as an example, wind turbines can be deadly for birds, but if we know where the birds are, we can put wind farms in safer locations. Or we could power down turbines when birds are migrating through. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is using eBird data now when deciding where to permit turbines. And this data-driven approach helps the U.S. generate energy and meet climate goals while also looking out for the birds. In California, the Central Valley grows a quarter of our nation's produce, and it's a critical area for birds that are traveling all the way from South America to the Arctic. Many shorebird species depend on these lands and are declining. There's just 1% of the Central Valley's original grasslands remaining for them. So our partners at the Nature Conservancy used eBird data to pinpoint which areas were used by the most birds, and they paid farmers to flood fallow fields. This created temporary pop-up wetlands at just the right times when birds were passing through. Another example, when we see big migrations coming on radar, we can send out alerts to turn off your lights. And that's because when birds migrate, they're attracted to lights from down below, and it disrupts their journey because it draws them in and it puts them in danger of crashing into windows. Windows kill 1 billion or more birds every year in the US and Canada alone. So turning out lights at the right time can help them make a safer journey. And in this example, computers are automatically identifying sounds recorded in tropical forests. They can monitor where endangered animals are and detect gunshots, chainsaws, and other activities that are involved with poaching. So when gunshots are detected, local guards can go out and deter poaching of rare animals like forest elephants and birds called hornbills. So this revolution in technology is changing the way that we see and understand and protect the world. We're now working toward global monitoring systems that can combine those observations from millions of people with environmental data, radar, sound recorders, and other sensors to detect and protect wildlife. In the U.S. State of the Birds report, ornithologist Drew Lanham wrote that doing the right things for birds benefits people. It's all about a shared destiny. When we bring birds back, we can recover nature and improve the quality of life for people too. And so, for example, in many regions, wildfires are running out of control, made worse by climate change. And in the past, there were smaller fires that burned more often. That created a mosaic of forests, and those mosaics supported more wildlife. So now in Oregon, landowners and communities and government agencies are working together to thin the trees, like to do that job of creating mosaics. This helps bring the fire down to the ground where it's easier to control. And then you end up with more birds, you're better able to protect homes, air and water quality, and jobs that depend on harvesting forests. Now, other regions are suffering catastrophic floods. Hamilton City in California had 6 evacuations in 20 years, with runoff projected to increase by 60% with climate change. And this was a disadvantaged community where the property values didn't even meet the threshold to be eligible for flood protection funding. But when ecosystem benefits were calculated into that, the city was able to qualify for a $100 million federal flood protection project. And so now a new levee helps prevent the flooding. Habitat restoration that went along with that has benefited 35 endangered species, including cuckoos and vireos. And this was a win-win for birds and for the community. Restoring forests and grasslands can create habitat for wildlife and at the same time keep 100 billion tons of carbon out of the atmosphere, according to the Audubon Natural Climate Solutions Report. So lots of examples where when we help birds, we help ourselves. But we have to be able to take actions like these quickly. And we're just starting to see a global movement for birds that is really fueling what I think is a new positive feedback loop. So when you see a bird now, you can download the Merlin app to identify it. You can learn more about that species and go on to identify the next one. When you share your sightings with eBird, you help us see what we couldn't in the time of the passenger pigeon. The abundance and movements and population trends of birds across hemispheres. And so these discoveries are driving new insights and solutions for conservation. More observations improve the tools like Merlin again and help people identify even more species. And when we have better tools, we've got more people on that path of learning, participating, discovering, acting, generating more data. So really think of this as like a flywheel or an engine for conservation, and it's powered by bird watchers and AI and technology. But we can't just rely on the technology, right? Our everyday choices are needed to help save birds too. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown of the top 10 list of things that you could do, some of which you might even be doing already. So number 10, if you like watching birds, you could use the Merlin app and the eBird app to record your sightings. eBird's going to help you generate checklists that are a really great keepsake of your outings while you contribute those data to help birds. And if you like it, you can also share by introducing a family member or a friend to birding, which is just so fun, and it's a great wellness activity. Number 9, you could buy products that are grown in ways that support wildlife. Shade coffee is an example. Most coffee is grown in the sun, and so tropical forests are cut down to grow it. But you could get a cup of shade coffee that was grown beneath trees, and your purchase of that shade coffee supports farmers and healthier soil and water and 42 species of migratory birds on their wintering grounds. Number 8, do what we can for climate, because climate extremes and disasters affect all of us. I included a picture of a puffin here. Just like all who live along coastlines or islands, their homes are threatened by sea level rise, but they're also affected by changes in the ocean. There's a live puffin cam run by Audubon, and viewers were able to see that chicks were starving in the nest. And it wasn't because there were no fish. The puffins were bringing fish, but not the usual kind shown here. They were bringing butterfish, which were too large for the chicks to swallow. So changing water temperatures and currents are causing big changes in fish populations, and scientists are seeing alarming declines of many ocean birds now. Number 7, avoid pesticides. So there's this other group of birds called aerial insectivores. They're in trouble too. They eat flying insects, and warmer and earlier springs could cause a mismatch in the timing or the amount of insects to feed their young. And on top of that, pesticides can kill not only the pests, but also beneficial insects, including those that the birds really rely on to survive and feed their young. So by avoiding harmful pesticides, you can help wildlife around your home, and you can also reduce your own exposure to toxins. Number 6 is reduce plastics. This is another kind of pollution that can be deadly to birds. Each year, 11 million metric tons of plastic enter the ocean, and birds like albatrosses, they think these plastics are food. It's really heartbreaking to see cigarette lighters, bottle caps, even syringes and toothbrushes inside these birds. Sometimes it may look like some of the, prey that they're trying to forage on normally. But on Midway Island in the Pacific, where many seabirds live, albatrosses are accidentally feeding their chicks an estimated 5 tons of plastic each year. Number 5, garden with native plants. This is one of my favorites because this little patch in my own yard has brought in hummingbirds and goldfinches and 90 species of bees that I did not even know existed and would not be there if I had only lawn. 90 species of bees. The neighbors love it, and they'll stop and they'll ask questions. They take seeds to plant in their own yards. And, actions like this might seem small, but there are more than 186 million gardeners in the US. So that's a lot of people and a lot of possible habitat to support wildlife. Number 4 is make your windows safer. So I mentioned 1 billion birds or more are estimated to die in window strikes each year in the US. It's one of the biggest human-caused sources of mortality for birds. Now this picture shows glass here at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And the lines that you see are cords. They're called Acopian bird savers that we hung outside the windows, and it helps the birds to see the glass before they hit it. So your goal is to place visual markers 2 to 4 inches apart on the outside of glass. One hawk decal is not going to do it because the birds are going to fly around it. So you can use bird-friendly film, tempera paint, cords. You can get creative. One of my students says, each year, 1 billion birds die from collisions with buildings, which is an opportunity to keep 1 billion birds alive and flying. Number 3, keep cats indoors. So aside from habitat loss and degradation, outdoor cats are the biggest human-related source of mortality for birds. They're estimated to kill 1.3 to 4 billion birds each year. And keeping cats indoors is better for the birds and small mammals and insects and amphibians that are killed or injured by cats. But it's also safer for cats because outdoor cats are more vulnerable to vehicle collisions and to diseases that are transmitted by wildlife. And outdoor cats live less than half as long as indoor cats on average. So people are getting creative. Like this is a catio that you can now buy on Amazon. I was stunned to see how many different kinds of catios one can now buy or make. People are taking cats out in backpacks or on leashes or letting them tune into the bird cams to stimulate them without, capturing an actual bird. Number 2, advocate for wildlife. And here's some good news in these politically divided times. Americans all across the political spectrum love and value birds and outdoor recreation and nature. We just have to give wildlife a voice. The bipartisan Recovering America's Wildlife Act was introduced in the Senate. It would provide funding for all 50 states to recover wildlife, $1 billion a year. And polling shows that 86% of voters support it, including 92% of Democrats, 85% of independents, and 83% of Republicans. So to pass it, we just need to let decision makers know that we care and keep voting for candidates on both sides of the aisle who will protect environmental health. And I want to give a nod to the incredibly dedicated Lehigh voters who made national news yesterday by standing in line for 6 hours to vote. Incredible. And number 1, you can take direct action in your own community or support the many good organizations that just need the funds to keep operating. You could get involved with land trusts, with city park foundations, or nonprofits that restore habitats. Land trusts across the country protect 61 million acres altogether, which is more than all national parks. It all adds up. My journey with birds began in Chinatown with 2 pigeons in a paper bag. So I'm curious, when did your journey begin, or will it begin next? And where will you take it from here? We really need people with all talents and skills and cultures. Together, we can multiply the ripples, we can make some waves, we can think about, you know, what are the different ways? Can you influence the number of people willing to act by inspiring a friend or a family member? Maybe you're a social media influencer or an artist or a storyteller or an educator. Can you use your voice for environmental justice? Or can you promote sustainability through your business or your workplace? Will you increase solutions and partnerships as a volunteer or a professional in your communities? Will you advocate, or vote, fundraise, or donate for conservation? Or are you a scientist who will discover and drive new conservation solutions? When together we act, we can help bend that curve for birds and for our planet. Birds transcend politics and boundaries. They span hemispheres and cultures. Wherever they go, they spark wonder and hope. They show us what's right in the world, and they signal what isn't, and they show us the way forward. So I hope you'll join me in hearing their call. Let's take some steps to help them and our planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Miyoko. This was amazing. Thanks so much. So we have a few questions, and please do use the Q&A for asking us some additional questions. You know, I feel very lucky because I didn't even plan it, but I found just on the shelf here in the office my first bird dictionary, or, you know, like all in Hebrew, because that's the way, you know, like I used to check on birds when I was like 4 years old. And, you know, it has all the images, a map, and a lot of write-up per, you know, bird. And like I was kind of, and I had, this was like my most cherished book ever, you know, when I was growing up. This was like the locus of knowledge, you know, and so like I kind of, because of some of the things that you were talking about, which, you know, like all those enthusiastic people that are like, you were saying something about the power of naming, and like, you know, like here, you know, and like one question that I had was like, where is it? Where does it transfer to? You got the AI tools now that kind of do, you know, like some of this work for us. You know, they identify, which is like a key to kind of going to next step. And, you know, like you kind you know, is there like, do you find that now the lab needs to kind of get into that kind of work or like learning curve? And when is it that, you know, like you can kind of say, you know, okay, here are the experts that, you know, like here we are, you know, we're available to you? Because it sounds like a lot of it is kind of becoming more kind of, you know, like on your own, kind of you explore, you find, you know, if you're lucky. So I'm kind of, and you know, like obviously as a librarian, I'm thinking about it all the time, because like a lot of what we're working on, and definitely with AI, which is the theme of this year, is connected to, you know, like automation and availability of information, and the power and an empowerment that comes with information readily available. But then I'm kind of always questioning, we are always asking ourselves, how do we connect, you know? How do we kind of create a connection between the person that studied, you know, like all that stuff, and, you know, the available information? So I don't know if you have like your own perspective on that.
I hear you. I hear you. And even though I talked about AI a lot tonight, I think we have incredible platforms now to bring that human side of the knowledge to more people as well. And so a few things that popped to mind for me, the Cornell Lab of Ornithology has a Bird Academy, which is a distance learning program. And so we often try to connect people once they've taken that step with Merlin. They are going to hear from us to say, hey, would you be interested in taking this course over here about birds? There's also thoughts about how do we integrate Merlin with more of a social network experience. They just recently rolled out features where you can more easily share your moment of pride. But in the future, there might be more integrated ways to let people connect and share knowledge around that. And then also multimedia. I feel that with a consumption of video on the course where it's going, there will always be that opportunity to bring experts and people on any aspect of that learning curve together and frankly learn from each other, because with the live bird cams we have, the experts learn as much from the audience as the audience learns from the experts.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to start reading some of the questions we got. Janine Moran is asking, in your opinion, do you think identification of birds through the app is improved with Sound ID? Do you think it has generated more data? I know there have been some times where I do not select a bird because there are two very similar, and I was not close enough to see the smaller differences.
Yeah. Well, so the functionality is improving all the time because we have people downstairs working on it. And we have not reached the point where Merlin can accurately identify all the birds of the world. It's better in the regions where we have more sound recordings. So it's really good with the birds that are most commonly recorded. And one plea that we have is for people to keep recording birds that might be less often recorded to help with that. So I do think there is that positive feedback loop between people giving it more data and it becoming more accurate, and then it just becoming more useful as a result. But it has a ways to go before it, is perfect. Probably will never be perfect. Probably always will need some level of human, judgment in there, which is why
I think there's going to be
currently,
a time that we identify a particular bird that, like this is, name and is there variation that we know that we can just indicate that particular bird is this bird, meaning like we know who is or she.
yeah, I mean, we're increasingly getting there. Currently, the way data quality is managed in eBird is through a reviewer network where we have human reviewers who are taking a look at, like, just double checking the species that you reported. Is it really found in your area? If it's very unusual, would you upload a photo so we can, double check, that sort of thing. I think in the future, some of that review burden can fall to automated processes, at least for the ones that have the highest confidence levels. Maybe not everything.
Cool. We had a couple of questions about the benefit of AI and the challenges that come with AI. How do you balance those benefits? You had given us some ideas on how to do that already. But the environmental impact of the power used, the data that is being consumed, and just generally, like the technology that is being utilized in order to make all of this thing magic work.
Yeah, I know. It's a dilemma. There's so many pluses and minuses around anything that you approach these days. I think for me, the biggest hope is that in order to make the kind of planetary change that will really lead to much greater sustainability in the end, it's going to take a lot of shift in how people steward our planet. And to do that, we have to reach a lot of people and get this cultural sense of priority around stewardship of that planet. And so I guess I can say that although it may be costly at some level, with AI, power drain and all that, hopefully there's enough good that comes out of it that it can, that we can catch up to bending that curve. But yeah, and I'm curious, among the audience, what other scary or major challenges that you can envision with this type of technology in this realm of bird conservation or nature sustainability as a whole.
yeah, write to us if you have some suggestions or things you want to share. So somebody, Barbara Mult, is saying that Lehigh University should know that we have a new campus club, Mountain Hawk Birding, and all are welcome to connect and do birding on campus. So you're also welcome to join the Lehigh Valley Audubon Society for many local bird walks and programs. And yes, so
Awesome.
please
Love
take
it.
that into account. And this is awesome. There was a lot of interest, in the exhibit and kind of generating some ideas towards this talk. So, like, yeah, as you're saying, birds are kind of crossing boundaries, crossing political divides, and this is very exciting. So, like, thank you for letting us know about those the club, the two clubs. That's really awesome. One of our staff members, Maccabee, is asking, he's saying, great app, and asks about the bird identification AI tool that predated the recent AI boom, you were saying, I think. Have there been any new commercial or open source tools that you're looking to improve the app further?
That's a good question. I haven't really caught up on the commercial side of things because at the time when I was talking about the Holy Grail, we were getting a lot of queries from private companies that wanted to license our data. And so we would license them a research, thing, but they, I guess, didn't figure it out before we did. But now I imagine, yes, there's a lot of potential. I mean, Google, right, has made it just an everyday common occurrence to do that and so much more. So in terms of our tools, one of the ones that I showed called BirdNet is open source. And so there is a community of people where sometimes, for example, there's even contests, like there's a particular challenge in the sound ID realm, and then, yeah, they spur each other on and come up with new innovations. So yeah, it's a part of that whole big community of AI.
Do you keep like the files like as like where? So when somebody's uploading, a file with that sound, does it is it kept kind of as a whole somewhere, or do you keep the pictures of the bird sounds isolated kind of from the rest?
Yeah, right now with the sound ID tool in Merlin, we're not saving the sounds, so they're not going into that next training set. We draw from the eBird data submissions for that, and it's partly an infrastructure issue because keeping that on the fly and then all, it just makes a lot of stuff we need to figure out on this end. But the other product here called BirdNet, which is the one that's identifying all kinds of animals now, it does, I believe, save that recording, and it's using that more traditional process of intake and computer training.
Yeah, it's like, we in the library, like we have several kind of audio recording projects where, like we, as an effort to kind of get closer to the source, instead of documenting, writing up, a summary of a conversation, we just record people as they come with their experiences. And that's usually a part of our conservation effort nowadays, because we want to make sure that whatever we're collecting resonates with people, the way that they experience those collections, and kind of thinking, like we want to kind of make the most out of those this is really personal audio files where, people are sharing their, impressions, memories, and other things that, they do. And we think that, one day we can kind of recreate a map of like a little bit of a network between people and their connections and relation to each other, which I'm sure lots of kind of ideas like that are all flying around us like birds in one way or another. do you have like a sort of a vision? Like, do you know if the lab, like, going forward, like, 10 years from now or something like that, like what would be like the the kind of recreation of like that experience, or like a different piece of like your lab is going to be dedicated to other things than they are now? I know it's a hard question to ask that far from today, but I don't know, we're all trying to kind of struggle with those, like ideas about what's going to happen.
I know, and it's so hard because the pace of change is so stunning. There's so many things that AI can do now that we wouldn't have imagined just a short time ago. It's really, really hard to keep up with it. So, I mean, I guess the hopeful side of it is if we can apply it in ways that really enhance the learning and enhance the connections, it's tremendously powerful. I don't think we've really sat down here to truly imagine what that experience could be like on the outreach side. I know on the conservation application side, this notion of being able to listen to the planet and all the multitude of wildlife, and not all of them make sounds, so we're going to have to find different ways to pick that up. But it may give us a very different and real-time picture of our stewardship and the effect that we have when we do take or don't take actions. And hopefully that's a motivating thing for more effective conservation.
Yeah, one of my first memories in life, like, before the book, was at my parents' where I grew up, and we had like a big porch, very lucky, kind of lucky in a very urban environment, with lots of trees and birds everywhere. Those birds are extinct by now. All of them, I don't think, are there anymore. But remembering myself, sitting, looking at those birds, I remember the feeling, I remember the visual and the audio that kind of came with it, and like it's sort of like a memory kind of dome, like where you can kind of pick together things. And I think what's so cool about birds, they kind of ignite those things, like like scents do sometimes, like you have kind of direct connection to when were you, what were you doing when you met a bird, like what you were describing about your own childhood. Danielle Gustafson is asking, I'm sure you're aware of the vast number of AI fake bird photos and videos and the massive interest they have. Any thought about people's infatuation with transparently fake online bird content?
I don't know, or maybe even the whole movement to say that birds are not real, right? I don't know what to do with that one. But yeah, it was really interesting for me because when preparing for this talk, and I knew I didn't have a image to depict like bioacoustics conservation revolution or something like that, I said, I'm going to go to Chat GPT and I'm just going to see what it creates if I type that in. And it gave me this landscape. It had all kinds of crazy birds and wildlife, which are probably not real. And I was going to use it in the talk, but then when my husband came by and saw it over my shoulder, he had this reaction. It was just like feeling like, that's really scary. And so, yeah, I don't know. There is that kind of scary side of it, but for some people, it's very engaging. And we'll have to see where it goes.
Yeah, there is Brent is telling us again some new information about Pennsylvania that just started a 5-year Pennsylvania Bird Atlas, a great opportunity for birders of all levels of experiences to contribute as Merlin broadened participation in atlasing.
That's a good question. I don't know the direct answer to that. I do know that the number of people is rising who are joining eBird and Merlin, both at very high curves. I hope there's a relationship there. And just overall, the number of people in the country who are taking this up as a passion is increasing. So the more eyes and ears and people reporting, the better.
Can I ask, just I know we have a few more minutes, just talk a little bit about the lab itself, like how many people work uh, in the lab, and like it's a non-for-profit, I know, as you were describing, but you know, like kind of you were saying something downstairs. There are people that, you know, like work on the AI kind of features and things like that, which is always kind of interesting to me because obviously in a library, in this library, we have developers that are, you know, creating discovery layers, and like, you know, the catalog is managed by us. And more importantly, it's kind of, you know, like we're kind of thinking domain expertise plus, you know, like with some values, some, you know, vision, some like, you know, like making sure that there is alignment around, you know, like the people that are working inside an academic organization, you know, like kind of see alignment around different aspects of their profession. Like how does that work? Because I'm sure that like any organization, there were like, you know, changes that just reflected because of some of those things that you were describing, that, you know, like you need more people doing that type of work than in the past.
Yeah, honestly, at this point, we might have more tech people than we have ornithologists. So, yeah, well, first of all, I welcome all of you to come visit the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. We just renovated our visitor center. It's really fun to come see that. And I guess if I can take you through a quick virtual tour, we have 2 floors and we are just filled with interdisciplinary work, all aimed at research, education, and participatory science to basically improve biodiversity understanding and conservation. And so we have the Macaulay Library, which is the world's largest collection of animal sounds in video. So it's not your kind of library, but it's basically a website where you can get these millions of animal behaviors. It's kind of like a cross between, I guess, a museum and a library. And we have traditional DNA labs that are studying population genetics and other behaviors. We have education department. We do K-12 as well as lifelong learning. Conservation media team that really focuses on multimedia as that vehicle of delivery for engagement. So it's just this wonderful place full of creative minds in such different ways, straight out biology, computer programming, design, art, storytelling. Yeah, it's a really fantastic place. And I think that's part of the magic of what comes out of here.
Yes. Yeah, I visited it twice, I think, while I was kind of closer by, and I loved it. And it's so exciting to hear everything that's going on there. It's just, I think, 3 hours away from us here if you're in this area of the world. So please go and visit. It's amazing. Okay, well, it looks like we kind of almost running out of questions. There was another question about like, what do we do on campus to kind of make sure that, you know, we don't have accidents, that we're, you know, as bird conscious as possible, you know, like knowing that, you know, that hawk that I see quite often on like a window, you know, not here, but generally is just not effective, is a good thing. Do you have more recommendations for us on like what campuses can do to kind of avoid, you know, like some of the natural and unnatural danger?
Yeah, that question is really close to my heart because we were seeing birds hit the windows here at the Lab of Ornithology, and the live cam with our hawks, Cornell's big red hawk, she's a red-tailed hawk named Big Red, and her family, we've had many of her fledglings actually come out of the nest successfully. They're flying around only to hit a window and die. And it's just devastating every time that happens. So first, what we did was we worked on addressing our own building with those Acopian bird savers that I showed you. And then just over the last couple of years, we've started a Cornell Bird Friendly Campus initiative, and it's led in part by students. along with a couple of mentors, including myself. And we have started to document the collisions with photos. We're raising awareness with facilities directors and administrators. We're bringing information to people about solutions and trying to get these demo places set up around campus to inspire others. When you look across universities, this seems to be a growing movement. I honestly feel that other universities are farther ahead than Cornell. I'm really interested in keeping our university moving forward, and I'm happy to connect with anyone who has questions on that. My email address is mcc37@cornell.edu, and some point we think it would be wonderful to have a network of universities working on these issues together.
That's great. Yeah. This is like, one of those kind of really exciting things between universities you can do together. Usually we kind of provide a list of resources to attendees as well. So like we can kind of think if there is something that we can recommend, and even, like things you think we may want to read or, like explore is going to be great. Okay, well, I think we kind of ended all the questions that I got. I hope that I covered everybody in one way or another, sending your questions to us. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's really great to have you all here. I know it's been kind of one of those days that people are thinking about their energies and trying to kind of conserve, the goodwill and everything. So really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Miyoko, for talking with us about your work. I'm hoping that you're going to come here soon. If not, I'm going to see you at the lab. And please visit the exhibit. The exhibit is on the first floor in the Linderman Library, all about birds and conserving them and like ways by which we protect the wonderful nature all around us. So thanks everybody, and we'll see each other soon in another program.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Miyoko.